Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a weekend reading vlog. I was going to try and do a weekly vlog and I kept starting and restarting several times this week and yeah, it just didn't work out this week for me, but we're starting a weekend reading vlog. I have so many very exciting reading plans for the month of June. It is Pride Month. It is also my birthday month, so I generally tend to save a ton of anticipated books or books that I'm really looking forward to in the month of June. So I have good feelings about my reading for the month of June. I also feel like very rejuvenated and very excited to be reading. I have pretty recently come out of a reading slump. So yeah, it was a very weird couple of months. I feel like end of April, beginning of May, I was in a reading slump, and then I pulled myself out of the reading slump with like some very surprising books. Most of my reads, about half of them in May, were nonfiction, which is not usual to me. Usually I might read one nonfiction book a month, but never really more than that. I read about 6 or 7 in May. So I'm definitely out of a reading slump and I'm just very excited to dive into some good books this weekend. So I'm gonna go through all of the books that I am currently in the middle of. I usually am in the middle of quite a few books at once. That's pretty normal for me, but I do have 2 books that mainly I am reading physically, and then I have one audiobook at the moment. So the first physical book that I have is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is the first in a trilogy. It is a fantasy and it takes place in our world, but there's also like a secret world of witches and an organization of witches living alongside of humans. So in this book we are following 4 main characters. They were all very close when they were young. They're all young witches. They grew up together, and then you sort of find out as they're adults they've kind of become estranged, not as close for one reason or another, and they all have very different opinions on Her Majesty's Royal Coven and the kind of value and what a society of witches should be and how they should interact with humans. So they all kind of have very different views on how that should be done. So not only that, but we do seem to have some sort of conflict or war that happened before this series started that really affected all of our main characters and really enforced their opinions, and also moving forward with various traumas that war veterans have from that war. So we're following these 4 different perspectives, and then one of our main characters, who is the head of this organization, the Her Majesty's Royal Coven, she gets wind of a prophecy that is going to come true that spells the doom of both witches and humans and our whole entire world. So she's kind of getting the gang back together and they have to kind of figure out how to deal with this threat. I believe I'm not very far into this one. I'm only on page 53, so we'll kind of see where that goes. I don't know if we follow all 4 main characters equally because I've only gotten a point of view from 3 of the 4 main characters so far, and one of them has had significantly more page time than the others, so I don't know if we're going to follow all 4, but on the back of this book it does talk about 4 main characters, so we'll see. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Recently I have really loved kind of all the moving parts of like an urban fantasy or fantasy magical world that takes place concurrently to our non-magical world, so I'm enjoying this one. I'm not very far in it at all, but I'm really intrigued to see where this series and this story is going. And then the second book that I just started the introduction to last night is a nonfiction book, and this is the 2000s Made Me Gay Essays on Pop Culture by Grace Perry. So this is a nonfiction book, series of essays talking about queer culture and the 2000s and different forms of media that really impacted the LGBTQ millennial experience. I wanted to get in theme for this video. I am wearing my Neopets Pride shirt from the official Neopets store. Neopets was a huge part of my life as a kid. So yeah, I saw this cover and I kind of saw the synopsis and I had to pick it up. I just think it's going to be a very interesting sort of, not deep dive, but just examination of pop culture, and even when pop culture isn't like expressly the best representation or even any representation at all. I think it's so interesting seeing what kind of like icons and movements and just different things came out of pop culture. This author, I believe in the introduction, she said she was born in '89, so she is a little bit like more firmly rooted in millennial culture than I am. I was born in '95, so I'm very much like on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z, I feel like, because I did grow up in the 90s, but when the 90s ended, I was still very much like a child. So most of my early childhood memories are very tail end of the 90s and then in the aughts. So I think depending on like what arbitrary kind of number you look up, 95 or 96 is like the cutoff for millennials. So while in a lot of ways I definitely feel very millennial-y, I also feel like I can relate to the elder Gen Z experience as well. So kind of in the middle. But honestly, like looking through the titles of the different essays in here, I don't think that that's going to make too much of a difference. I feel like it's still going to be something I am going to kind of relate with and resonate with a lot, because like I'm already seeing like Disney Channel Presents movies. It has essays on things like Mean Girls and Glee. So I'm very excited to read this, not only because I feel like I am going to relate to a lot of the content in here, but just reading the introduction, the author just is like very funny and just has a very engaging sort of style of writing that I think is going to be so good for this essay collection, because sometimes I can't stand it when you're very intrigued and interested in a nonfiction book and the information they're relating, but the way that it's related is so dry. This is just very conversational. The back says that this is as bingeable as its source material. Another thing that I wanted to point out that I saw on the back that kind of encompasses what this is supposed to be is that Grace's witty and honest book helped me appreciate just how uniquely bizarre a time the aughts was. It's mind-blowing to see that I wasn't the only weird teen girl who did the weird teen girl things I did. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this one as well. So those are my two books that I am reading physically. I do have an audiobook as well, and that would be We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan. This is a book following a field hockey team in the 80s. So this book, at least on my Libra FM copy, when I go to this book's page, it has a blurb from NPR saying that this one is for the adults who love watching Stranger Things. I feel like this definitely would be a good comp book to My Best Friend's Exorcism, because it's following this group of field hockey players in the 80s, and they sort of make a pact with an otherworldly, potentially demonic or witchy spirit to help them perform better in field hockey and win field hockey games. And I'm not very far in this one either, but the tone of this is very much kind of like funny and bizarre almost. Like My Best Friend's Exorcism definitely had some horror, some scary elements to it, but it was just also a lot of fun and kind of like horror comedic. I feel like this is kind of the same way. It's also written in such a unique kind of format. So we have the narration it's kind of an omniscient narration, but the point of view is first person plural. So the whole entire time it's talking about we did this, we did that, this character did this is what we thought about it. So we're following the whole team as a main character, which I think is so interesting, and especially with like a close-knit group of girls who are all like on the same sports team in high school. I feel like that's such like a very smart way to write about it. So yeah, I haven't gotten too far into this one either, but it's very strange and very interesting. I know a lot of people, I've seen it compared to Bunny before too. It definitely has that. I haven't really seen or read any like outward horror in this one. It's not very horror-y at all to me. But just like that same vibe of supernatural and like comedy and kind of absurdity and like that 80s theme, it's all there. So I'm really enjoying it so far. Again, I've really barely scratched the surface of all three books that I plan on reading this weekend, but I'm really excited to read them all. I have really good feelings about all of them. So that's pretty much all I have for this weekend. It's honestly going to be like a very media heavy weekend, I feel like, because I'm in a big reading mood, plus also me and my partner, we have to catch up with Obi-Wan Kenobi and then also Stranger Things. As much as I would have liked to watch all of Stranger Things in one sitting, the episodes are just so long this season. So we are on episode 3. We just finished it last night, so hopefully this weekend, I don't know how we've steered clear of spoilers yet because it has been out for about a week now, but we're getting there. So we're hoping to finish that this weekend. So that's like 2 or 3 movies right there, because the episodes are all like an hour plus long pretty much. So we want to finish that. I want to get some reading in, and then we also want to see X. That's a horror movie. I rented the Blu-ray from my library, so that needs to be returned on Monday. So definitely need to get to that this weekend too. It's also me and my partner's 8-year anniversary today, so probably do some celebrating, go do something a little bit fun for that as well. So all in all, very exciting weekend. Looking forward to it. It is Saturday morning right now, so I'm very excited to go ahead, kick this weekend off. I am going to go get some reading done, and I will check back in later with an update. happy Sunday. I did not do a lot of reading yesterday, especially towards the end of yesterday, like I kind of predicted. Honestly, me and my partner had a really late night, so then we pretty much slept in today. So yeah, not so much reading done. Last night we didn't do anything too big. We did make dinner, make drinks. We watched X. That movie I really enjoyed it. In terms of horror movies, I absolutely love horror as a genre. I tend to like paranormal, ghosty, that sort of horror more than slashers. I'm not the biggest slasher person, especially like with classic film franchises. I tend to like the ghostly ones more than the slasher ones for sure. But this was a slasher and I really enjoyed it. I tend to usually get along really well with A24 horror, so I enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid like 4-star movie for me. It's about a group of aspiring young porn stars. They go to a farm, they rent out one of the buildings on this old couple's property to film their adult video. It takes place in the 70s, and it really starts going from there as they start shooting their video. Someone is picking them off one by one. I thought it was really good, and it's interesting, I think, honestly, that I thought it was so good because it definitely was like an homage to slasher, like classic slashers, such as Friday the 13th or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just with like the color, the saturation, and even some of like the long shots, I felt like were very reminiscent, but I didn't feel like it was reminiscent in a way where it was very tongue-in-cheek and like you had to enjoy those to enjoy this one. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was very graphic in both violence and sexual ways because they are showing these adult stars filming a porno, but the acting was really good. And one of the things that I really liked about it, that I tend to not like about slashers, is I don't like when they're all so unlikable that you don't really care whether or not they live or die. Here I felt like most of our main cast of characters were all like nice people and just interesting characters that you didn't want to see die, but alas, slasher film, everyone dies until the final girl or final person. So yeah, I had a lot of fun, really enjoyed it. A24 horror and me tend to get along really well, but that was a pleasant surprise because I finally got around to watching a couple weeks ago now Malignant, which was one where I was anticipating to be a movie I was going to love, and I really hated it. So I'm really glad that a movie that I had heard good things about I actually enjoyed. So you're not here for movies, you are here for books. But if you needed a good slasher movie, X, highly recommend. But the book that I have been reading this weekend would be my nonfiction. I'm on page 162 out of 230, and I'm really enjoying this one. The essays are all pretty short, very, very readable, so I will definitely finish this one today. I'm enjoying my time reading it. I feel like, as with any essay collection, particularly one that kind of has like author's personal life story elements to it, as well as just talking about pop culture and different types of media, there are some essays in here that I enjoy more than others, just based on like what they revolve around and how much like I relate to or kind of feel about the specific media that's being talked about in each essay. Like, for example, there was one that was kind of heavily featuring talking about like The Hills, Dawson's Creek, OC, shows like that where I've never really watched, gotten into, so obviously I still enjoyed that one and like the things that were said about it, but definitely not as much as like the one about like Disney Channel original movies. I really enjoy that this one really seems to be talking about a lot of different types of media, so I feel like even if you don't like every single thing this author talks about, you can definitely find an essay that will relate to you. I mean, we talk about everything, again, from like the OC to Dawson's Creek to reality TV shows on MTV to there's an essay called Harry Potter and the Half-Assed Gay Character. That's also talking about like fan fiction websites, Katy Perry songs, Taylor Swift songs, also just pieces on everything from like Glee to The Office. So there's a lot in here. I'm really enjoying it. I'll definitely finish this today. If I finish one thing all weekend, it'll definitely be this. Yesterday, I just ultimately did not get around to reading too much, but I definitely feel like I'll be able to finish this one, and maybe I am really not sure what kind of fiction mood I'm in the mood for. I am really enjoying my current audiobook. However, I'm not in an audiobook mood, so I'll probably listen to that one more during the week. In terms of the weekend, I don't really know what I'm going to pick up. Hopefully, maybe there'll be something in this book that will kind of inspire me to want to read something specific, so we'll just have to see about that. But I'm gonna go read some more of this, try and finish it, and I will check back in with another update later. it is Monday now. I love that I very confidently said this is going to be a weekend vlog only, and we're just kind of spreading it into Monday, so kind of a weekly vlog. It's whatever at this point. One thing about myself that I've learned from several years on booktube now is my plans for durations of vlogs never really work out. It's just whenever I feel like vlogging. So this is kind of more of a regular weekly reading vlog, but it started on Friday night or Saturday morning. I forget which one, but I do have reading updates. I did finish one book over the weekend, and that was my nonfiction, The 2000s That Made Me Gay, Essays on Pop Culture by Grace Perry. I enjoyed this one. That being said, this is definitely catering towards a very, very specific demographic, I would say. I definitely go into this one knowing that there are like personal anecdotes and like kind of memoir sort of sections throughout this, as well as just examining culture. It is very much, while there are like statistics in here and like discussion about overall cultural effects, a lot of these are very personal as well. So this I feel like definitely is kind of looking at a very, very specific group of people. Like, I don't think if I would give this to someone who is quite a bit younger than me, I don't think they would enjoy it, because you definitely have to have almost lived through all of the media and not like gone back and watched the media, but experience it as it was happening. So I definitely think that it could tend to be very much catered towards a white queer millennial woman's experience, but I did think it was entertaining. So just kind of knowing going into that. Also, probably I would say for this one, don't be afraid to like maybe skip one if you don't feel like reading all of the essays. It was a short enough read. I did find it entertaining, and I also think it's important just going into it knowing that this is also like a biography or memoir in parts, and it is really speaking towards one person's experience, whether or not it talks about that in here as being the experience or just one person's experience. Just me knowing going into that, I thought helped me, because by no means is this going to ring true for everyone. There were definitely things that I, again, identified with, resonated with more than other things. So I thought it was enjoyable overall. Definitely a quick nonfiction read. And then I didn't read a lot during the weekend. Other than that, I've just been on a really big movie kick lately. Me and my partner actually watched The Ring 2. The Ring is one of my favorite horror movies. I can definitively say The Ring 2 is not one of my favorite horror movies. It's just very, so different in tone, and it just does a lot of things like change the lore of the first one that was really engaging. So we really saw it on a whim. We saw it on Paramount Plus when we were looking for another movie, and we saw that it was leaving at the end of June, so we decided to watch it on Sunday, and it was not so good, but it was like an enjoyable time in that it was kind of bad. It was one of those, but it did really get me craving wanting to pick up some horror, especially some horror, like creepy little kid paranormal horror. So definitely that influenced the next book that I picked up this weekend, and that would be Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. So this is a horror novel about a young woman who's trying to get her life back on track, recover from addiction. She answers this job ad that her sponsor helps her put together. This interview for meets this family is nannying their young son throughout the course of a summer. He starts drawing pictures and talking about this imaginary friend, talking about some very creepy, sinister things that might have happened in the past or are going to happen in the future. I didn't get too far into this one. It's very eerie. I'm on page 74, and what I really enjoy about this one is that there's a mixed media element. So our main character Mallory is babysitting this 5-year-old named Teddy, and throughout the book you see Teddy's drawings, and most of them, especially to start out, are like very cute, very normal childhood drawings. He's a sweet kid. I really enjoy having this aspect to it. Everything's going fine until you realize he has this imaginary friend named Anya. I don't think this is much of a spoiler. It's the synopsis of the whole book. So yeah, this was page 24. Sufficiently horrified. He's talking about this imaginary friend that he has named Anya, who tells him stories, and these stories kind of get more and more creepy. So I'm very intrigued to see where this story is going. Haven't gotten too far into it. I haven't actually seen a lot or heard a lot about this one, but I work at a library, so this is one of the books that came through when I was processing books, and it just seemed really intriguing. I love that premise, like Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. I really loved that book. This kind of seems a little bit similar, where you have this young child and this caretaker and creepy things start happening. It's like my favorite subgenre of horror, honestly. So I'll probably continue to read more of this tonight. I haven't picked it up since last night, but I did have a really productive day at work, and I was lucky enough to have lots of time at work where I could do tasks and also listen to an audiobook at the same time. So I did manage to get through a lot of my audiobook, We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan. I'm about 81% of the way through this one now. I'm really enjoying it. I definitely think that I am enjoying the audiobook more than I would had I picked this up physically, just with the way it's written with the first person plural. But I'm really loving the tone of this one. I am a little bit surprised that even though it's very conversational, it's very funny, very witty, it feels like it should be a short, quick, snappy book. It's definitely a lot longer than I was anticipating. So it definitely is a book that doesn't seem slow paced, but it actually is slow paced. But I'm really enjoying it. I was actually reading an interview I found online with the author, and it was talking about, I feel like it balances really well being true to the 80s and like appreciating the 80s. The author grew up in the 80s. She was a teenager in the 80s, and the author was talking about simultaneously writing something with her nostalgia for growing up in that time period, but also recognizing that definitely I feel like now with so many things coming out, like Stranger Things, just the 80s are very popular, very romanticized right now. So I think the author does a really good job at kind of giving the audience what we want with, like, you know, the fun hairstyles, the fun fashion, the music, all of that, but also talking about, this book kind of touches upon topics that I don't see a lot in fun 80s books. Because this is horror comedy, it is a very fun book, it's a very light-hearted book, but it also does talk about things that would impact a teenager in terms of discussions. Like the teenagers talk about things like the AIDS crisis in here, things that are going on at the time of the 80s, being a teenager in the 80s that you don't really think about when you're watching like a more glamorized depiction of the 80s. I also think the author does a really good job of being true to kind of the tone of the era in terms of the way marginalized people were treated. We do have several team members on this field hockey team who are potentially kind of queer questioning. There is some rep there kind of discussing that, and obviously the limitations of finding out that you're not straight in the 80s as compared to maybe the experience for a teenager now, as well as we do have several characters on the team who are not white, and the differences in, there's a black girl on the team and there's also 2 Asian girls on the team, and one Asian girl has an Asian family that immigrated here and the other was adopted by a white family. So we do have little conversations there as well that I feel like tie in really well, because we do spend some time with each individual player a little bit, even though we are following the team as a whole. So I just think those are done really well, because I feel like if you're looking for historical fiction, a lot of the times you either find ones that are very hard-hitting, the ones that you just know you're going to sob through, really hard-hitting, horrible things have happened in the past. I'm not saying there's not a place for those books, or they're like very glamorized and like completely gloss over all of the issues. I feel like this does a really good balance of just teen girls getting to be teen girls in the 80s while still really being true to the culture and not so great things that were happening in the 80s. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I have about 2 hours left in the audiobook, so I'll definitely finish that tomorrow when I'm driving to and from work. If I have more time at work tomorrow to listen to an audiobook, I'll definitely try and finish that one as well. But I'm really enjoying it. This was one where I feel like I gave myself a lot of hype for it because it was constantly being compared to Stranger Things was one, even though it's not a book, it's a TV show, but it also got compared to Bunny, My Best Friend's Exorcism, just a lot of books that I really love, and it was very intimidating for that reason, because I didn't want to pick up something that was supposed to be like a lot of my favorite books and then me not enjoy it, but I'm really enjoying it. So I should definitely finish that one tomorrow. Hidden Pictures is a bit chunkier, so probably not. I'll kind of pick that one up in little spurts throughout the week, but that's all I have for this update. I'm going to go read some more Hidden Pictures. I'm about on page 70 or so out of, I think this is around 350 pages, so I'm gonna go get some reading done, and I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Hello friends, happy weekend. Long time no update. It is Friday. Yeah, I've just been having a busy week. I have been getting to some reading, not as much as I would like, and definitely not the books that like I was anticipating, but honestly really been enjoying the things that I've been reading. I can't remember when I last updated you. I did finish We Ride Upon Sticks. I don't remember if I mentioned that, but I did finish that. Did really like it. Highly enjoy the audiobook. I'm really breezing over that because I feel like I've talked about it. I feel like I said I finished it, but I don't remember, but I did enjoy it. But yeah, what I'm reading currently, I am reading Greedy, Notes from a Bisexual Who Wants Too Much by Jen Winston, and this is another one that's kind of similar to The 2000s Made Me Gay, honestly, where it is like kind of a memoir, kind of a series of essays written about queer culture. This one though, the main focus of the essays and like the biography is not necessarily growing up in the 2000s and like representation or the lack thereof in media, but this one is more specifically, well, I guess it could be talking about media, but it's not its main focus. This is more specifically talking about bisexuality and just kind of the bisexual experience. I've followed this author on Instagram for a really long time and I think they're really funny, and I'm just really enjoying this a whole heck of a lot. I don't know what it is, I've just been picking up a lot of nonfiction these past couple of weeks, so I am really enjoying this. I also really enjoy this like the nonfiction that is a series of essays, because I just think the conversational tone really works for me, especially if you want to read nonfiction but kind of get easily intimidated by the very sciencey ones, which don't get me wrong, I do love those too, but I just really enjoy like a good conversational tone. Like this one especially really feels like you're sitting down and listening to a friend talk to you, so I'm enjoying it. And I definitely will say this week I've read every single day, but I haven't had like a lot of time to read physically, I mean every single day, so I feel like the format of this one is also just perfect because it is divided up into separate essays. So I'm really enjoying reading Greedy. I can't wait to read more from it. Then this is not book related, this is just me related. When I got home today, my birthday present that I ordered myself came in the mail. Because I'm an adult, I have an adult job, I make adult money, and yeah, I always buy myself a birthday present, one birthday present every year, and I always try and make sure that like my one birthday present I buy myself is something that I would not buy for myself any other time of the year, so something that's like a little bit frivolous. So I bought Bulbasaur Loungefly. Bulbasaur is one of my favorite Pokemon, so I had to get this bag. It's adorable. He's adorable. I love it. I also got the matching wallet. This one's a little more practical just because my wallet I've had for years and years and it's falling apart, but the bag definitely not like the most practical thing. I'm not going to use it as my bag for every single day, but I am very excited about this purchase. So yeah, this is my birthday present to myself. It's not until the 24th, but I went ahead and ordered it so that I would have it on my birthday. So that's pretty much all I have for this reading update. I'm very excited for the weekend. Don't have any plans other than reading and relaxing and not doing work, but I'm gonna go ahead, get the weekend started. I will talk to you all later. Alright, so it is the end of the week. It's time to wrap up this weekend reading vlog that turned into a weekly reading vlog, but I do have a couple of book updates before that happens. Definitely a little bit of a different reading week than I thought. I did get to some books on my TBR, and some books I was planning on reading at the beginning of the week, but definitely other ones I kind of just picked up as I kind of got them from the library or just felt like being in the mood for those books. So yeah, I started a lot of books during this past like week or so. Definitely would like to whittle that down a little bit more, but I did end up finishing another book that I started this week, and that would be Greedy by Jen Winston. I enjoyed this one. I think this one, you'll probably want to go into it knowing something about the author. I frequently find sometimes books are nonfiction based on a topic, but they're also kind of a little bit like a biography or memoir. It's obviously nice to know kind of the work of the author or things that they do before diving into it. Not all the time. Definitely I've picked up some things by authors where like the first thing that I come across is a nonfiction book that's also kind of autobiographical, but this one I feel like is one of those where you kind of want to know more going into this one almost, and just kind of knowing where the author is coming from in terms of their work. So Jen Winston is the Instagram handle Generous, and if you were way back when, it actually mentions a little bit in one of the essays. It was her account used to be called Girl Power Supply, and it was like a meme account for feminist memes. I'm kind of really condensing what it was for all intents and purposes, but it was a very popular meme inspiration sort of call to action account, Girl Power Supply. And then later on, as she was kind of learning more about the kind of activism that is like impactful and like what they wanted to do, she changed her handle to Generous, and then it kind of became more of like her personal life because she is a writer. She's been featured from things like the Washington Post and CNN. So I think very helpful kind of going into this knowing that this is a person that does this for a living, kind of right in the space. It says on the back that her work bridges the intersection of sex, technology, and politics. So that's where her work is kind of based off of. I do feel like I got a little something more out of it, kind of following that journey. I did actually follow that Girl Power Supply account like way back when and saw like the eventual change from that to her main handle now, which is Generous. So I thought that was interesting, and honestly I really forgot about that, and that was an account that I followed. Like many of us, she talks about how she created that account after the 2016 election and just trying to cope with all of her emotions surrounding that. I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed that she was really sure to kind of mention other works that were influential to her own journey and just like her own writing as a whole, especially knowing that she is a white queer person, definitely going to be different than a queer person of color. So I really appreciated kind of the acknowledgements of that, and also just giving different works, different articles, different podcasts, like things to listen to read to get like a more fully fleshed out. This is not claiming to be like an end all be all for anything, which I think is really important to know. So yeah, I thought it was an engaging read, and definitely I feel like the middle section of this, it is divided into 3 different sections. I felt like the beginning and the end were a lot stronger than the middle, just in terms of like what it encompassed and kind of what was more relatable to me, but also just more engaging to read about. I just felt like there were stronger essays at the beginning and at the end, which I guess kind of makes sense. You kind of want to start strong and end strong so that you have like a mostly positive experience reading the book. But I did really enjoy it. I do honestly think I did read this one physically. I wish I would have picked it up on audiobook. I just feel like with the tone of this, audiobook would have worked really well for it. But I did have a good time reading this one, and then the next book that I picked up, and I have not finished it, but I would not be surprised if I finished it within the next couple of days because it is very short. That is going to be Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman, and this one is kind of very far out of my comfort zone. It is a contemporary literary novel, and I will say just by going into this is one where there's a lot of time jumps. There's a lot of like experimental things going on with the writing itself. None of the dialogue is in quotation marks, so sometimes that can be kind of hard to pick up what's being like internal monologue to what's actually being said, and just it's very lackadaisical almost in terms of time and event sequence. There'll be like time jumps and you won't realize until just like a throwaway line here or there that there are time jumps, so it's very interesting, very much out of my comfort zone. It is blurbed by Raven Leilani, who is the author of Luster, so I feel like the blurb on the front usually is an author where the publishing team wants this work to be compared to that work, so I feel like if you liked Luster, this might be very similar. This is also being compared to Joan Didion, Sally Rooney, and Otessa Moshfegh. So it's in the reign of all of that. and I don't normally read anything like that, so very interesting. So this is following a woman named Eve, and she has a life that she's content with. She has a stable relationship with a long-term girlfriend. She has a job that she's not passionate about, but she does like, and it makes enough money to get by, but she's kind of going through life. She impulsively, at the very start of this novel, without even really knowing why she does it, takes a series of nudes and just posts them online. She doesn't really know why she does this. It's anonymous, but she just has them out there. And from the site that she posts them from, she gets a personal message from someone wanting to meet up because of her nudes that she's posted. So she just goes and meets this woman, and eventually kind of gets introduced to this woman's partner, who is a man. And Olivia and Nathan, which is the couple that she's introduced to, kind of invite her to be a part of their lives, just in a very sexual way. And it's just such an interesting dynamic, and so it's really just diving into that dynamic. All of that, what happens in chapter 1. So that is like the setup for what is happening throughout the story, and kind of an exploration of our main character Eve as she's kind of exploring like what she wants, or even like what she feels, what she wants out of life even. It's very strange. I feel like I'm explaining it pretty poorly, but it's very interesting. It's definitely one of those books that feels like very smart, very literary. It is literary fiction, but it's interesting. It's 218 pages. I'm on page 66, so pretty short, but definitely like a lot to think about. Very much character-driven story instead of plot-driven. Like, there are events that happen, but it's really focusing on how our main character Eve is feeling and trying to work out like what she wants versus what she thinks she wants and what other people thinks that she wants. Very interesting. So that is what I'm currently reading, but I am gonna go ahead and wrap this vlog up because I have been vlogging for about a week now, so I think that's good for a vlog. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for more content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!